Welcome to Fibs and 4. I'm glad you're here. I want to spend some time with you and over the next few lessons help you understand how Fibonacci analysis is going to create or construct a framework for you to do your analysis of the market and ultimately put some more cash in your jeans. Specifically in this class, we're going to do an introduction to Fibonacci analysis and talk about why it works in the financial markets. There's a lot of questions out there that I run into. Is this just stock market voodoo or what's really going on here? And there actually is quite a bit of science and quite a bit of specific reasons why Fibonacci analysis works on your stock charts. And so I want to go through that as we start. I want to address the common myths that are out there so that you've got a really solid foundation for why you're going to use this particular type of analysis. There's a lot of bad information on the internet and some good, but I want to give you a understanding so you can discern what is good and what just needs to be thrown into the trash. Lastly, I want to talk about Fibonacci ranges and retracements and target zones. These are going to help you answer the two most important questions every trader should be asking, which is where should the market be trading and where should the market not be trading? Those are your two framework questions. We'll talk more about them in an upcoming lesson. And then lastly, as we do in every course, we'll be giving you some homework and sending you on your way with lots of good exercises so you can put this into practice and ultimately put that cash in your jeans. So let's get started. I want to go over this introduction and talk about why Fibonacci analysis works specifically in the financial markets. If you've not yet been introduced to the Fibonacci sequence, here it is on the top of your screen, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, so on and so forth. And if you had a lot of spare time and were a boring person, you might want to expand this sequence on in for infinity. It goes on forever. And the way you would do it is by taking two numbers, let's say 0 and 1, and adding them together and getting the next number in the sequence. So 0 plus 1 equals 1. Let's fast forward a little bit and we'll say, we'll take 2 plus 3, and it will give you 5. The answer's on your screen. Now here's a hard one. What if we took 8 plus 13? What would the next number in the sequence be? 21. You got it. Doing good? Let's continue. Another way you could choose to look at the Fibonacci sequence is through what we call a Fibonacci spiral. Now, the Fibonacci spiral in graphical format is right here, but we have two pictures beside it, one of a hurricane and one of a nautilus shell. So we have theory and then we have real life, what actually happens in the physical world. The way you would construct this Fibonacci spiral is the same way you construct the Fibonacci sequence. So let's start with a box, and we're going to arbitrarily call that box 1. It's 1 to the left and 1 up and down. Then we would put next to that box another 1. Remember your sequence? 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5. So what do we have now? We have your two boxes that represent 1. Well, what's the next box in the sequence? It's 2, but check this out. Look how they merge together. You put your box that is 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 over the two 1 boxes, and you have the next step in your Fibonacci sequence. And you can continue on for as long as you want. Back and forth. What are we up to? 1, 1, 2, 3. This would be 5 by 5 by 5, or at least as far as my eye can judge on the screen. And then you create the spiral by literally connecting each of the corners of the box. And you could continue on, so on and so forth. Now my drawing looks horrible, but here it is in graphical format. And you can look this up online, Google it, Fibonacci spiral. And you'll see beautiful renditions of Fibonacci spirals, but that's how you construct it and put it together. What I want to stress to you right now is that, on the left-hand side, as we mentioned, we have theory. This is the theory behind the Fibonacci sequence. But then on the next two images, the hurricane and the nautilus shell, we have real life. And oftentimes, theory really emulates what happens in real life, but not exactly. We have to make some small changes and nuances because what happens in real life gets, a little messy. Unlike our lives, right? And so the hurricane here, you can see, represents the Fibonacci spiral. The same thing here with this nautilus shell. And if you were to pick this spiral up and drop it over top of them, you would find that they have a very, very close relationship to each other. One that meteorologists have used to forecast weather patterns and hurricane paths for years and years and years. Well, in addition to Fibonacci spirals and nature, there's other ways we can experience the Fibonacci sequence, one of which is through music. We have a keyboard we've just added here. It's in the middle of the screen. And at the most superficial look on the keyboard, you can see that, well, there's 2 black keys and 3 white keys, or 3 black keys. Let me say that differently. There's groups of black keys into groups of 2 and 3. Right? And so if you look at a piano keyboard before you, it'll be 2 black keys, 3 black keys, 2 black keys, 3 black keys. And obviously 2 and 3 are Fibonacci sequences. But let's get really nerdy for 1 second. If you're a student of music or music theory, or maybe you just really enjoy music and you've put a little study into it, you're going to know that in our Western music, when you construct a chord, there are 3 notes out of a scale that create the root of that chord. And those 3 notes, you might guess, are 1, 3, and 5. 1, 3, and 5. So if you played notes 1, 3, and 5 on a keyboard, it is going to sound aurally pleasing to you. It's going to sound good. Why is that? I don't know. It's just that life has a certain way of showing us that Fibonacci ratios and golden ratios, which is what fibs are built off from, are pleasing to us. They're pleasing to us visually. They're pleasing to us orally. So we've talked about nature, we've talked about music. Let's do one more for fun, and let's talk about anatomy. You know, there's a great example of Fibonacci ratios right at the end of your hands. You got 2 hands, right? It's a Fibonacci sequence, a Fibonacci number. At the end of those 2 hands, you've got 5 fingers. 5 is a Fibonacci number. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, both Fibonacci numbers. And by the way, did you know why you have 2 ears and 1 mouth? Because you're supposed to do twice as much listening than talking, right, husbands? They're all Fibonacci numbers. You know, surgeons have been using for years Fibonacci ratios and the Fibonacci sequence and specifically the golden ratio, which we're about to talk about, to help beautify people, to help do reconstructive surgery or plastic surgery, whatever the case may be, because as humans, we have an idea that these ratios are what's beautiful to us. And so whether it's reconstructive or whether it's beautification surgery, whatever the surgery may be, we have learned that if we follow these guidelines, then the end product is going to be pleasing to our eyes. So what does all this have to do with the stock market anyway? Well, here's the bumper sticker for you, if we could boil this all down. Life has a rhythm. There's a certain pattern to life, whether it's through creation or through some other means. You know, there is a certain rhythm that happens in life. In fact, Pythagoras discovered this rhythm, and Euclid later defined it as the golden ratio, which is there on your screen, 0.618, in the late 4th century BC. So for thousands of years, we've been studying these ratios and how they relate to life. It was made very popular by Leonardo da Vinci in his illustration of Luca Pacioli's Divine Proportion. And of course, here on your screen, we have the Vitruvian Man, which has been censored for anybody that might be offended. And the Vitruvian Man has for a long time been studied for its Fibonacci proportions. And here's just a couple simple ones for you that, you know, the relationship between the head and the toe of Mr. Vitruvian is related to his navel and his toes. So his head is exactly 0.618 greater than his toes to his navel. It's interesting. Now, you could Google and spend hours studying this one photograph that is just loaded with Fibonacci ratios, but that's not going to help you put more cash in your pocket. So we're going to move on from that now, but I wanted you to see this as an example because it has to do with life's patterns and specifically why the stock market tends to follow these ratios. Since their origin, the financial markets have followed the similar and symmetrical rhythmic patterns of life. For example, you know, we live in a world today where we're very disconnected from the roots of the stock market. We trade through a computer and an online broker. We do our charting online. You know, there's not a whole lot of standing out and looking at the cornfields, wondering if it's going to be a bumper crop and drive the prices down this year. We don't tend to do that in our modern day society. But if you can imagine back even just 100 years ago, not that long ago, you know, it would be very appropriate to get a report on, you know, exactly what's going on in the cornfields. And you might even be standing there, you know, experiencing the weather patterns that are causing this bumper crop. We've got a tremendous yield of corn this year. And as an investor, you might say, supply and demand. We're going to be flooding the market with supply. There's a good chance corn value may fall. I think I might buy puts. Make sense? Well, what would be driving that? Certainly the weather. And we've been using the golden ratio and Fibonacci analysis for years to forecast the weather. It could be economic cycles, which, by the way, economists have used Fibonacci ratios to forecast economic cycles for years as well. It could be cultural cycles. I once read an article about how they could predict which movies were going to be the blockbusters for a particular season. I think it was the summer season, based on Fibonacci ratios, because there's a sequence to our cultural shifts, what people want to see. Is it an action movie this year? Is it a love story this year? Is it a horror movie this year? We can study all of that. So there's cultural cycles. And lastly, just public perception. They get this feeling about them. They don't know how to describe it or articulate it or put words to it, but what they're feeling are these Fibonacci cycles. And we start building this rhythm, and all of a sudden the market starts following a similar rhythm. And wouldn't it be great if we had some tools where we could decode that rhythm and put it over your stock charts? Here it is on a bumper sticker for you. If people feel most comfortable operating within a given rhythm, in the financial markets are traded by people, then isn't it logical that the market itself is going to follow a similar framework or a similar rhythm? I want to challenge you for a second, and you may be sitting there wondering, is this real? I've not yet seen this, Josh, and I'm questioning whether it's real, and I want to do a little exercise. I want you on the next screen to find all the yellow letters you can. If you've got a piece of scrap paper there in your notebook, perhaps, just write down the yellow letters that you can find on this next screen. Are you ready? If you don't have a pen or paper, don't worry about it. Pause the video or just keep track of them mentally. There's not too many of them. Here we go. Find all the yellow letters, not the black letters on yellow background, but find all of the yellow letters. Ready? I'm going to just 3 more seconds. 2, 1, and stop. And now what I want you to do is tell me all of the letters you found that were red. Now when I do this example live, first of all, I usually get some disparaging remarks, we might say, but after the chuckles and stuff, people say, I didn't find any red letters, and you're probably the same too, unless you are an achiever and you've paused the video by now and backed up and found all the red letters, and there's some people that'll do that. But the truth is, at the beginning, you hadn't found the red letters, even though they were there the whole time for you to see. You just didn't necessarily know what you were looking for yet. Let's do one more example. Can you tell me what this says? Just blurt it out as soon as you've read this. There's a word or words that are represented by this barcode here. Have you got it? If you're struggling, I'll help you out a little bit. I'll give you a clue. Yeah, now you can see it, right? It says Fibonacci analysis. Now, I have no idea how to read barcodes. Given enough time, I might be able to say, well, there's a thick bar and 2 little ones, and that looks a lot like here is a thick bar and 2 little ones, and maybe those are related here somehow. And we could maybe try to build a framework, but the truth is there's tools already out there that help us read these barcodes. In fact, some of you have already pulled out your phone with the barcode reader and you've zapped the screen and you've discovered it says Fibonacci analysis. Well, again, just because you can't necessarily see the framework instantly doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Of course, barcodes have revolutionized how we buy groceries, but I can't read one to save my life. I rely on the little machine to beep, beep, sending my apples through, and I'm buying them, even though I can't read the information that's on there without the right tools. You may be similar. You may not have been able to read the market framework from a Fibonacci perspective because you didn't have the right tools, either physically in terms of your charting software or intellectually. You didn't know exactly what to look for. That's what we're going to solve as we move forward. I want to leave you with one last thought as we wrap up this video. It is the responsibility of every analyst, that's you. It's the responsibility of every analyst to determine the framework of the market and apply that knowledge within a given forecasting model. That is your job. If you can do that and deploy your risk management strategies and execute with discipline, you are going to put cash in your pocket. But the beginning of the profit starts with determining the market framework and applying that within a given forecasting model. You ready to go? Let's jump in. Let's understand this world of Fibonacci analysis, and let's figure out a way that we can take this framework and turn it into some cash. I'll see you in the next video.